going over the current state of it. Well, it looked like Adam Silver has to insert himself into this whole situation because for whatever reason, these WNBA owners and these WNBA players cannot figure it out.
The collective bargaining negotiations between the WNBA and its players have crossed a dangerous threshold. This is no longer a routine labor disagreement or a posturing phase common in professional sports. By all credible accounts, the talks have turned openly hostile. And the clearest indicator of just how serious things have become is Adam Silver's direct involvement, with only 8 days remaining before the January 9th deadline. This is highly unusual. The NBA commissioner does not typically insert himself so publicly or so personally into WNBA labor negotiations. Historically, the WNBA has handled its own bargaining process, even though it operates under the NBA's financial umbrella. Silver stepping in at this stage suggests that whatever is happening behind closed doors has escalated beyond normal dispute resolution channels. When a commissioner of Silver's stature feels compelled to intervene, it usually means two things are true simultaneously. First, the risk of a work stoppage is real, and second, the consequences of that stoppage extend beyond one league. A canceled or delayed WNBA season would not only damage the league's momentum, but also reflect poorly on the NBA, which has subsidized the WNBA for decades and positioned itself publicly as a champion of women's sports. The timing makes the situation even more volatile. The league is experiencing its strongest cultural moment in years. Ratings are up, attendance is up, media attention is finally breaking through to casual sports fans. A labor collapse now would not just stall progress, it could erase it. Silver's involvement signals urgency, not confidence. This isn't a victory lap. It's a containment effort. When leadership steps in at the 11th hour, it's usually because the standard negotiation framework has failed to produce compromise. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If both sides are entrenched enough to force Adam Silver into the room, how far apart are they really? This is no longer about fine print or incremental adjustments. It's about whether the league and its players can even agree on a shared economic reality. And with the deadline approaching fast, the window for salvaging trust is rapidly closing.
Could be on his way out the door. Now, we've seen ratings climb when Caitlin Clark entered the league. She has been the one kind of keeping this thing afloat. Well, it looked like Caitlin Clark impact just might not be enough to keep the WNBA around because as we seen earlier and as we heard a few weeks ago, the WNBA players want to go on strike and they want a share of that revenue. Now, I told y'all, I believe that there is not.
The deadline has already been extended once. It now sits at January 9th. Adam Silver suggested that both sides would not have agreed to an extension unless they believed progress was possible. That sounds reasonable until you consider what sources close to the negotiations are actually saying. According to front office reports, meetings are happening almost daily. And yet, players remain deeply pessimistic. Daily meetings without resolution are not a sign of momentum. They are a sign of entrenchment. When negotiations reach this stage, the problem is rarely numbers. It's trust. Each side believes the other is negotiating toward an outcome that fundamentally disadvantages them. There is also a complication that has received surprisingly little attention: leadership overlap. Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, two key figures in the Players Union, are also the driving forces behind Unrivaled, a new professional women's basketball league. That creates an unavoidable conflict of interest. If the WNBA experiences a lockout, displaced players need alternatives. Unrivaled becomes an immediate beneficiary. That doesn't mean bad faith, but it does complicate incentives. When union leaders also run a competing league, ownership is going to question whether prolonged negotiations serve outside interests. Even if unintentional, perception matters. This dynamic adds another layer of distrust at a moment when trust is already fragile. It's not being discussed publicly, but it is absolutely part of the subtext shaping negotiations.
See exactly what the hell is going on with Adam Silver. So this article came out from Front Office Sports, and it states Adam Silver says he could join WNBA negotiation. The NBA commissioner said he'll do whatever is necessary on the CBA, while Breanna Stewart said his presence will be welcome. So it looked like Breanna Stewart is aggressively kind of warning.
When Front Office Sports reported Adam Silver's comments, "We're available to do whatever is necessary to help get a deal done," the phrasing was revealing. This was not optimism. It was intervention. Silver did not say negotiations were progressing. He did not say both sides are close. He said he was willing to step in personally. In labor negotiations, that language signals distress, not confidence. It suggests that existing negotiators have hit a wall. The fact that Silver made these remarks publicly ahead of an NBA Cup game underscores the seriousness of the situation. Commissioners are careful with language. They do not volunteer involvement unless the risk of failure is substantial. Equally telling was Breanna Stewart's response. As vice president of the Players Union Executive Committee, she openly welcomed Silver's participation. That is not the reaction of a union that feels empowered or optimistic. It is a reaction of a group that believes the current framework is no longer producing progress. When players ask for outside intervention, it often means internal trust has broken down. They may believe ownership is not negotiating in good faith, or that structural power imbalances are preventing meaningful compromise. Silver's presence introduces both authority and risk. On one hand, he has the leverage to push ownership toward concessions. On the other, his involvement raises expectations that a deal must be reached. Failure after this point would be catastrophic. This is why his intervention matters so much. It elevates a dispute from a league-level negotiation to a reputational issue for the NBA itself. If the WNBA season collapses now, it reflects directly on the NBA's governance. Silver isn't stepping in to negotiate details. He's stepping in to prevent collapse.
Adam Silver vowed to take on another high-level item on his to-do list, and that is the WNBA collective bargaining agreement. Now, last time we heard from Adam Silver speaking about the WNBA, this is what he said. He said, "We're available to do whatever is necessary to help get a deal done," Silver said, ahead of the Knicks NBA Cup win over the Spurs. He stated, "I'm encouraged by the fact..."
For nearly 30 years, WNBA owners have operated at a loss. Not marginal losses, not temporary shortfalls, sustained structural deficits covered year after year by the NBA. That history matters because it forms the foundation of ownership's position in these negotiations. From a league's perspective, revenue-sharing demands cannot simply ignore 3 decades of financial reality. The WNBA has never been profitable. It has survived because the NBA viewed it as a long-term investment, not a revenue generator. Owners absorb losses with the understanding that eventual growth might justify the expense. What makes this moment different is Caitlin Clark. Her arrival shifted the conversation. Television ratings spiked. Attendance jumped. Merchandise sales surged. For the first time, there is tangible evidence of revenue growth driven by player-driven demand, and that has emboldened the players' union to push for a model that resembles more established leagues. But the key question remains unresolved. Is this new revenue sustainable, or is it situational? Ownership views Clark's impact as promising but fragile. One star does not guarantee long-term profitability. Players, on the other hand, see this as proof that the league's ceiling has been artificially low due to underinvestment and undercompensation. This disconnect is at the heart of the dispute. The players are negotiating based on future potential. Ownership is negotiating based on historical losses. Both perspectives are rational, but they are fundamentally incompatible unless compromise occurs. Revenue sharing makes sense in leagues with stable, recurring income. The WNBA is still trying to reach that point. Owners fear locking themselves into obligations the league cannot sustain if momentum fades. Players fear missing the only moment of leverage they may ever have. That tension explains why talks have become so contentious. This isn't about greed or ingratitude. It's about timing and whether the league should pay players based on what it has been or what it might finally become.
We'll get something done. The WNBA and WBPA and more than a year into negotiations for a new transformational CBA agreement. We all know that deadline is coming up on January the 9th. Now, the results of a second extension as both sides continue to exchange proposals, with sources telling front office sports meetings are taking place almost daily. Players are not feeling hopeful at Silver. So it looked like players is telling.
On the surface, the league's latest proposal looks generous. A $1 million base salary, a guaranteed minimum. A team salary cap increasing from $1.5 million to $5 million. An average salary approaching $400,000, nearly triple the current figure. But the most headline-grabbing element is revenue sharing. 50% for players. At first glance, that sounds equitable, almost progressive. The issue is how revenue is defined. The proposed formula excludes broadcast rights revenue and allows certain expenses to be deducted before the split. When analysts run the full calculation, players would receive less than 15% of total league revenue under this structure. That's not deceptive in a legal sense, but it is misleading in presentation. This is where negotiations often break down. Ownership emphasizes percentages. Players focus on actual dollars. And when those two narratives collide, trust erodes. The players see a proposal designed to appear fair while preserving financial control. Ownership sees a compromise that protects the league from insolvency. Neither side is irrational. But without alignment on definitions, numbers become weapons instead of solutions. And with time running out, that may be the most dangerous part of all.